Don't go out there! You'll leave the ghouls here! You'll get us both killed!
So what is this game? Why are we talking about a game that is almost old enough to drink in the US? I'm talking about it simply because I was playing a small indie game called Sorceress, and I was told it took heavy inspiration from Dark Messiah. Sorceress had a lot of creativity on display with how you can deal with enemies and traversing the environment, so I chose to go straight to the source of that inspiration and see what it was all about. I recall seeing the cover to this game every time I used to go to the video store to rent something, but nothing about the cover made me just take a leap and rent it. You know, I kind of figured it was just some generic fantasy story and didn't really care too much. Didn't really rip me away from Oblivion or anything like that. Looking back, I regret that, but I managed to play it eventually on my PC. This game is far from perfect with some pretty large flaws, but I absolutely love this game for what it tried to do. This game is worth your time, and here's why I recommend you give Dark Messiah of Might and Magic a shot in 2024.
Breathtaking, isn't it?
Before we get into the real meat and potatoes of the game, we're going to briefly go over the story. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's pretty forgettable. Doesn't really deviate from your usual medieval fantasy world. Let's go over the little bits of the story that I can until we get into spoiler territory. You play as this guy named Sereth, some massive nerd who is the apprentice of an even larger nerd named Fenrig, who is definitely not part of some sort of shadow wizard money gang. And he tasks you to go get a large piece of jewelry while slaying the ops along the way. But now that I think about it, this is just kind of the foundation for professional wrestling, only with slightly less baby oil and tights. This part is your tutorial, and it does an excellent job showcasing what the game is truly about, which is about combat and environmental interactions. Okay, so I remember F is kick. I will have to remember this because this is probably going to be the best button in the game.
You can break them.
Oh, the planks? Oh, these. Oh, wait. Is this game going to get real creative with me?
It looks like you'll have to go up here. Jump on that chain and climb.
Oh, this game is going to be fire. I can tell already.
Slice through the rope. That should help.
Okay. Yeah!
The undead are tenacious.
Hey, my man, what's up?
Over the edge.
Yeah! Once you get the crystal, Fenrig puts a lady into your brain named Zana, who is definitely not a succubus.
One can travel lighter than two, Sarah.
Don't worry. You'll learn to enjoy the pain. You can call me Xana.
Mark me down as scared and horny.
Yeah, totally not evil at all. Just don't worry about it. Then you go to Stonehelm to meet with his frat bro, Menelag. Meet with his apprentice slash niece slash potential new love interest, Liana. Menelag then says he's having life impotence problems and can't help you on your quest. Okay, now I can't really talk about more from here, but it's more predictable, generic, and just kind of boils down to stop the big bad evil guy from ruling the world. Now there are choices that you can make that impact the story, where you can side with Liana or Zana, and there are multiple endings based on your choices. It's kind of neat, but still, nothing to write home about. Now, Dark Messiah really shines with its melee combat, since all the weapons feel satisfying in their own ways to use. And there are three main kinds that you can choose from. Staffs are just big old beating sticks that let you frequently knock enemies off balance and just off their feet in general. Daggers let you attack quickly, backstab enemies, and in my experience, were pretty easy to parry with. And swords are kind of that middle ground between staffs and daggers, but I didn't really feel any compromise when it came to just hacking guys up. But that wasn't the whole picture. When you pair these weapons with the golden feature of the game, the kick, Not today, Junior. There. This'll help. There we go. That'll help.
Show some skill before I...
Breathtaking, isn't it?
Now I'm a simple kind of guy. There's something about kicking an enemy off a cliff and watching them ragdoll and scream as they fall to their doom that just gets all those good chemicals that flow in my brain, and I never get tired of it. Now, magic, in my opinion, kind of takes a backseat to the melee combat, but that doesn't mean it's not fun in its own way. The spells aren't just an elemental damage source, but they also act as a means to interact with the environment. So for example, the freezing spell works perfectly well to trap an enemy in place, and you can shatter them with a kick, or a powerful melee attack, but it can also be used to create a patch of ice to make enemies just completely eat shit, and make the game into just basically a Three Stooges skit. Fire spells don't just deal damage to enemies, but they can also turn wooden objects into fire hazards that can light other enemies on fire if they touch them, but also turn those throwable objects like barrels into flaming projectiles that can be thrown or kicked, whatever you want to do. Electricity does a great job at locking down enemies in place, or sometimes even just killing them outright. It could stun them long enough to close distance to get in some melee attacks, or just giving you breathing room to heal or just reposition. On top of that though, it deals more damage to enemies standing in water, rewarding the player for your awareness of the environment and clever ways of kiting chasing enemies. And for the more roguish players out there are bows. And you can find some later on in the game with some magical properties. Even though they start out kind of underwhelming, they end up being a powerful tool, since not only they can act as a way to just kill unaware enemies pretty much outright, but they can interact with environmental set pieces. Though they never feel like Skyrim, where you can just one-shot everything and make the game a complete joke, which I like. You can also get a rope bow that'll make climbable ropes if you fire the arrows at wooden beams, or just wooden objects in general, letting you climb up to areas to progress and position yourself to attack or evade pursuers. Stealth will certainly let you sneak by a decent amount of enemies, but the game clearly wants you to fight everything you see, so it's best used to just reposition once your enemies spot you and just strike them from the shadows and repeat. There are also some skills where you can lockpick some chests and pickpocket keys off of certain enemies, but I never found it to be relevant since there are only a couple times in the game to take advantage of this, so I just recommend you spend your skill points elsewhere. Really makes you understand why the rogue skills are just kind of lumped into the miscellaneous tree. There's also not any kind of respec feature here, so when you spend your skill points, you've committed to that until you start a new playthrough. Remember, this is a game from 2006, and respecing really wasn't too widespread as a mechanic in games like this. I guess I'm just spoiled by quality of life features in 2024, but this doesn't really bother me. So now that I've glazed the combat, it would still be good even if you just played on a gray landscape without trees or really anything notable of an environment. But it wouldn't be elevated the way it was if it wasn't for the environmental design. Since the game runs on Valve's Source Engine, physics and lighting are core elements of those experiences, and Dark Messiah uses it well, giving you stunning looking levels that'll hold up even in the current year. Whether it's beams of light poking through barren ruins or sunny days in the middle of a city, this game looks beautiful.
This place is huge.
But it's not just for aesthetics. The level design often takes those lighting and physics elements for you to directly interact with, whether it's shadows for you to stalk around in, ropes holding up chandeliers can be cut. Oh god, there's a bunch of dudes. I gotta get creative. Alright, hold on, I got an idea. Yeah! Battering rams used to break open walls and secret stashes of supplies with magic weapon variants. Dark Messiah's environments also use a lot of verticality and absolutely pack those spaces with objects you can use to your advantage, whether those are oil vases, spiked walls, barrels, etc. These levels combined with the satisfying melee combat, the interactive creativity of the spells, and the stealth all provide puzzle pieces that combine into this perfect picture for you to be a chaotic little gremlin. But I hate to tell you, but that experience is not consistent for the whole game. From about the 60% mark onwards, the latter half starts to feel like it scales back the size and scope of each encounter, less secrets to find, less opportunities to experiment, in favor of a far more stripped back experience where your only way forward is just kind of through narrow hallways, and that's really a shame. If this game was consistent in that level structure and encounter design for the whole time, I would say this is an easy 9 out of 10 for me. Enemies in this game aren't that varied either, but I don't mind it at all since the humanoid enemies are so fun to fight, it makes up for the weaker ones. The game is at its best when the humanoid enemies are your primary foes, since they really make the most out of all the aforementioned parts of the sandbox and are the most reactive to it. It's when the game has non-humanoid enemies like spiders and those flying octopus things, where they don't really react to your attacks and there really isn't any environmental tricks you can use to deal with them. You just kind of hit them until they stop moving. Bosses are only a little bit better. The Cyclops can actually interact with the environment by kicking and throwing objects at you, even throwing people at you, which always gets a laugh out of me. But you deal with most bosses like a set piece by using a ballista or slamming a gate on them, which is kind of neat, but it doesn't really give me a sense of accomplishment or a test of my abilities if I'm given a problem, only for the game to dump the solution into my lap. The final boss is a complete fucking joke, too. I'm not even exaggerating when I say all I did to beat him was walk up to him, spam the attack, and it only took me 2 minutes and 26 seconds. The only reason he survives that long is because he puts up a magical shield that makes him invulnerable, while you kill some skeleton dragons that he summons. I took away the time I took fighting the dragons, and that only left me with...
You take your 33 and a third chance, minus my 25% chance, and you got an 8 and a third chance of winning at sacrifice.
1 minute and 9 seconds fighting the final boss. Oh, man. Okay. I didn't really feel like a hero. I felt like I mugged someone and took their wallet. Reminds me of that Sprite ad where Sting beat the shit out of that kid.
Wow, the Stinger.
Timmy, I'm from the Dream Come True Fantasy Foundation. You ready to wrestle?
You bet. Mom, Dad, it's really him. Hold on. Now I'm ready.
It looks so real.
Don't count on Sprite to do anything but quench your thirst.
Just kind of makes for a limp conclusion that didn't make me feel like it tested my skills or abilities or everything I've learned up until that point. And it just made it feel so lifeless and disappointing when this game has so much going on for it. Oh, is that it? So now we gotta talk about an elephant in the room. We gotta talk about the performance. I have the Steam version of this game, and I have a pretty decent computer with a 3060, but this game is going to crash on you a lot. And it's definitely going to dampen your enjoyment of the game if you have to stop because it crashes every 10 to 15 minutes. For me, this usually happened on loading screens, but also at seemingly random times. It's such a shame because there's so much to enjoy here, and there's nothing that spoils your fun than a random crash right in the middle of kicking guys off of cliffs. After some searching around, it looks like this happens because if you're running this on a modern computer, the game will automatically max out its settings. The game doesn't use more than 2 gigs of RAM, so on max settings it runs out of memory and crashes. In case you're interested, you can find a program called Large Address Aware and use that to expand the 2 gigabyte limit up to 4 gigs to make it crash much less. I still had some crashes even after I used this Large Address Aware, but it made my experience so much smoother. I realize it's not reasonable for people to go out of their way to deal with a problem like this, so if you're not comfortable with modding or messing around with files, you can still have a great time with this game. Now, Dark Messiah is jank, but it's a kind of jank that was made with a vision, with fun being at its core. I imagine the pitch for this game was just a picture of a guy getting kicked off a cliff or someone getting a barrel thrown at their head, and Ubisoft threw money at them. Dark Messiah is only $10 on Steam, and I would say it's worth the money, especially considering you get this incredibly fun game for significantly less than AAA titles charge for cosmetics. I also recommend the game I mentioned in the intro, Sorceress. It's only got a demo out now, but if you're a fan of kicking people into pits and creative sandbox interactions like I am, then it's definitely going to be for you. Link below in the description. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. This isn't my normal kind of content since I normally stream on Twitch, so I would really appreciate it if you dropped a follow over there as well. Link down below. What's your favorite part of Dark Messiah? Is it the kicking? Is it the barrel throwing? Is it the magic? Let me know. I'd be happy to hear what you think. Alright, Jeff Steitzer, let him know who's on top.
Jover Kill on top.